Before I go ahead and begin the panel, I just wanted to share this video to put in perspective what we're talking about here. And it's the aggression that immigrants face from the very top levels of government. And I want to share with you a performance piece I did on our nation's birthday, as there were children, unaccompanied minors, in a detention center right here in Miami. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and share that news story from that very day.
And also in the news now, a patriotic protest outside of a South Florida migrant detention center. A group with a moving message aimed at President Trump. And they're using the U.S. Constitution, hoping to get that message out.
We the people. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union.
Sending a message. That's what artist and University of Miami professor Xavier Cortada is doing with his latest performance piece.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Flanked by a determined group of supporters, he's hoping this patriotic display will reach beyond Homestead to the White House.
I'm not trying to politicize the day that we're supposed to celebrate the greatness of this country, but the best way I can celebrate this country is by acknowledging the things that are wrong with it.
For weeks, we've watched as streams of congressional lawmakers and presidential hopefuls showed up at detention facilities. Here and across the country, this has been happening. Snapshots from inside show migrants encamped in extremely overcrowded quarters.
There's got to be a more just and sensible way of dealing with people seeking political asylum.
Despite seeing and hearing about conditions, the president refuses to close the facilities, tweeting, "If illegal immigrants are unhappy with the conditions in the quickly built or refitted detention centers, just tell them not to come. All problems solved." End quote. The president is also pushing back against Democrats, blaming the same lawmakers who are complaining for the lack of resources from failing to act on immigration reform.
One of the alarms we've been continually sounding is the oversaturation of our facilities by virtue of a broken immigration system.
During the demonstration, protesters in Homestead shouted words of support as they got a glimpse of the older children from a distance as they were moved from one side of the facility to another.
But there's nothing I can personally do today to get those kids united with their families or these families to come together again. But by asserting the fact that we're American today on Independence Day, and by reading the very document that guides and controls the way we govern one another, we give ourselves hope for a better future.
Two House committees.
So as part of that video, you see the protesters trying to do their part to use the very rule of law, the very rule of this country, to try to bring about change, to remind us of what it is that organizes this society and how we move forward. And of course, our scholars today have given us a lot of perspectives on what's happening, a lot of statistics, a lot of impressions about how these stereotypes are advanced about the draconian measures that lack all sort of empathy and compassion. And what I want to take you through before I invite you to two of our presenters is I want to take you through a little bit of a dreamscape. I want to take you through some ideation here. So let me share my screen with you one more time. Gabriel Mata dances about the frustration and the fear in his life. He is a grad student and dance teacher at the University of Maryland. He states, "Sometimes after a performance, someone from the audience will come and tell me, 'I wasn't aware of this, I had no idea.' People may not see me as different, but underneath all the skin and the physical body, I have a different story. Julio Delgado, an artist, he says, "It is my duty to document what's happening, but at the same time, I want to document the happiness of my people, the resilience." I was doing all these images about stopping deportation, and while that's very much needed, I wanted to create something that was giving people hope. We're constantly seeing all these images of persons getting arrested by immigration and the sadness of it all. For me, it's important to put our stories and create art that gives me a three-dimensional narrative that a lot of times I don't see. An educator from Galveston, Texas, Fidencio Fitfield Perez, states, "Are these words enough for you to acknowledge my existence or my humanity? The moment that I was smuggled into this country at the age of 7, my body ceased to be my own. Dreamers' bodies have been debated, regulated, rounded up, and biometrically measured. Under Obama's deferred action, the stakes have risen with its potential repeal. We find ourselves repeating what we've done before, convincing you that we exist while allowing you to ignore that our parents are the original dreamers." A banker from Apple Valley, California, Zuleima Garcia, states, "My mom always showed me that anything is possible by working hard for it. I never really noticed or felt like I wasn't an American." Alonso Reina Riborada says, "We all have different backgrounds, first and last names, interests, journeys, and goals. However, we all have at least one thing in common. We are all dreamers." Dennis Montero Diaz states, "Our ask, however, is not an economic matter. It is a matter of principle and morality. We ask for nothing more than what we deserve. The cost we will continue to pay with our sweat from our brow and the pounding of our passionate hearts, as we've always done day in and day out. We ask only to let us contribute freely. Let us walk along with you, shoulder to shoulder, on the same road. Our hands help to pave. Human decency and morality demand it. The American people, our people, demand it." Kok Leong So, a student from Wichita, Kansas, states, "Without DACA, many live in daily fear of deportation. I have friends whose families were torn apart. I've seen my friends dig food out of the trash cans to help feed their families. These are genuine, everyday struggles. It's easy to dismiss it because it's not happening to your family. To truly empathize, you need to dig deep and allow yourself to feel our pain and anxiety. DACA alleviates some of the fear and provides hope." Isabel Mulamber, a paralegal from Jackson Heights, New York, states, "While DACA is not the solution to the current state of immigration affairs, it has given me and over 700,000 other dreamers the path to achieving the American dream." Ana Sanchez, a student from Ellington, Texas, "Due to the living conditions of my home country, my parents decided to immigrate to the United States to offer me and my sisters a much better education and a brighter future. Growing up, I was aware that I had been born in Mexico. However, I did not know the effects of being undocumented until high school came about. Now that I am older, I realize who I am in the eyes of government, and it saddens me to know that people believe these misconceptions of us. I mean, ever since we arrived to Texas, my dad has risked his health and life by working under dangerous conditions just to earn enough food and family and shelter for my family. These are the stories of a few among hundreds, indeed hundreds of thousands of fellow human beings who every day fear that their loved ones will be deported, who fear that they will go to a place they don't know, a place whose language they don't speak. These are our fellow Americans. And in today's America, the rules promulgated by this administration castigates them for simply being, because they are who they are. They are us. And I want to bring two voices to help share their stories and their journeys with us during this presentation. And then I'm going to ask them a few questions, and we're going to open it up to the panel to dig a little deeper and to find the humanity, the absolute humanity that is lacking in the policies of this land. And it is my honor now to introduce Cesia, who's going to share a little bit with us and her story. I know Cesia through my husband, who's a dean at another local university. She was one of his students. And I am just so proud because she works for Microsoft. She's told me how to fix my, my Zoom buttons. So Cesia, please welcome and tell us a little bit about your journey.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Cesia.
Cool. So like Xavier said, I came here to the United States when I was 3 years old from Honduras with my parents. My parents left everything. They had lost their business back there. And this is when the crime scene was going up in Honduras. A couple of years back, we were like the #1 country with the most violence in the world, even more than the Middle East. So there was a lot of like conflict, like a lot of my family, they were like shot and killed in Honduras. So these are all the reasons why we chose to immigrate, not just to like just come here, you know. There's more to that. And so yeah, I grew up in Miami. My parents would actually move around a lot. So when I was a little girl, I think I went to around 9 elementary schools. It wasn't until middle school that we started slowing down. So we lived in like North Carolina, in Colorado, California, like North Florida, so many places. My dad would, you know, have to look for new jobs because they would be working under the table to get paid. And it was definitely really difficult. I didn't really have that many, I didn't really have that many friends.
You're here in a very supportive group of people who've devoted, many of them devoted their lives, just like you do, to help advance justice. So
yeah, definitely. I didn't really have that many friends growing up because we would always be moving. And I remember, like, you know, reaching high school, I was really happy because I got to be in one school the whole time. I didn't have to like go to different schools and all that. And then, so yeah, I studied really hard to get any scholarship available. I graduated from New Road in Miami, New Road School of the Arts, and I remember being in the top 10. And you know, I had a 6.2 GPA back then because I took all these AP classes and dual enrollments and trying to stand out. Because I didn't really have a counselor, like my counselor, she was never really able to help me as much because I was the first dreamer at New Road. So I remember meeting up with her and she was really like trying to find anything for me, and she was really trying, and she was like, oh, you know, like, I can't really help you, like, I don't really know that much. And so I ended up missing a lot of deadlines like Bridge, which does allow DACA students and all these other cool like big scholarships that maybe I would have gotten. But in the end, it was so funny. It was my last semester and she found the Dream.us. I think that was actually the first year that they were starting it. And I was just so happy. I was ready to, work full time, go to, community college for like 2 years, and then until I figure out what to do. And thankfully, I did have my DACA status, at least like when I was graduating. So that really helps because a lot of people before me, they didn't have that opportunity, and they had to go straight to work at low wages. And it wasn't until DACA passed that they were able to go back to school. So maybe 10 years had passed for them and they were just stuck. And I was really lucky that is when Obama passed DACA, and I was able to land that opportunity. And then I was granted the Dream.us, which really just changed my whole life around. It gave me full tuition to FIU. And they have many private scholarships, partner colleges around the nation. I think right now there's around 5,000 people enrolled thanks to them, and Don Graham, and there's a couple of donors, big names like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, who are donating for us to get an education. So once I started FIU, I really started getting involved with the community and making sure that there is diversity in tech. I remember going into my first programming class, and I was one out of 4 girls, and actually befriended one of my best friends who's here right now. Shout out to Carolina. And her and I really saw that difference in diversity, that there was no diversity in technology. So not only was I a dreamer in technology, but I was also a woman. So it's a lot to take in. I was really thankful that in the end, I got a great job and all of that. But I wouldn't have been able to do that without the community pushing me, all my friends in technology, all my professors at FIU and honors. And I'm just so happy that I'm here now and that I am able to help my parents in every way possible, especially during this pandemic. And yeah, growing up, that was probably one of the hardest things. After I got DACA, I do have a temporary stay, unless, while it's, available. And so I was blessed about that, but at the same time, it's bittersweet because there were times where I wasn't able to really sleep because I would be thinking in the back of my head, what if my parents don't come back tomorrow? What if they're deported? Or what am I gonna do then? Am I gonna have to, live on my own and figure out all the bills? So yeah, it wasn't until I graduated that I feel a little less stress on that and less anxiety, but that's still at the top of my head, what I can do to help my parents because they did everything for me. So yeah, that is my current situation and trying to help them and, make their dreams come true as well.
So 11 schools, right? You went through 11 different schools through your life.
Yeah.
What was your shortest stay in one of those schools?
My shortest stay was probably in Olympia Heights in West Miami. I think it's around West Miami. It's near FIU. I was there for 2 months.
Yeah. No, I know how rough, I mean, I don't know, but I can imagine how rough it was to do that and to have all these shifting, sort of shifting, the ground shifting under your feet. Is there any story or any particular anecdote about that experience as a child and that the instability that brought, some special friend you left or some awkwardness in a new school in the middle of semester? Tell me a little bit about that.
So like I said, I didn't, even though I wasn't able to hang out or see most of my friends, we did drift apart a bit, but to this day, I have all my best friends from elementary and stuff added. And a lot of them actually didn't know my situation. I always felt kind of nervous about telling anyone. I always knew about my situation from maybe 2nd grade, right when my parents trusted me, I guess, enough to take that on. So it was a bit heavy for me the whole time. I never really felt comfortable in telling anyone, not even in high school. I think I told my best friend in high school, like my senior year. And then all my other friends, like they found out because, you know, they were like, oh, like, why are you staying in Miami? Like with that GPA, you could have gone anywhere. Or, oh, like, how come you still don't have your license? Like we're already 15, your learner's permit or whatever. And I would just make things up because I was really like nervous about letting anyone know, you know, about me. And even in middle school, like my parents obviously can't drive. So sometimes like we would take the taxi and people would always ask me questions like, oh, like, why are you taking a taxi after school? Like, don't your parents drive? Like, that's really weird. And looking back at that, I always felt like embarrassed. And obviously like it's no one's fault, right? Like there's no way we could have gone around that. But sometimes like I would actually prefer to walk like a couple of blocks to not be asked any questions. So we would walk a little, and then my parents and I would order like a taxi like when we got to CVS or something. Which looking back, obviously is really immature, like who cares? But back then as a child, like I just hated being asked those questions, like why don't your parents drive and all that. But then once I started opening up to my close friends, like late high school and college, I think in college is when I really like unveiled myself, especially like after meeting my friends. And like, you know, first things first, I would ask about what they thought about the situation and all that. Because I understand how some people have different viewpoints about my community and my people. So I didn't really want to expose myself to those type of people just because it was like unneeded stress. But once I started talking to people, it honestly became a relief. And all of my professors that I told were so supportive. Like I really did feel so relieved that they were all like on our side, technically. Like they were all like seeing the human aspect of it. Like, okay, yeah, like your parents did come here undocumented, like they broke the law or whatever, but it's like there's like a really strong reason behind it, and I see why that happened, and it really sucks. Your situation really sucks. So seeing that, you know, camaraderie and like, you know, it really strengthened me, and it really helped me get through it and to actually, you know, talk about it to everyone, because it, you know, a lot of people, they don't really understand why, but then maybe I think to myself, maybe if they listen to me and maybe if they listen to my story, then they may change their mind. Maybe they just haven't really, maybe, you know, they don't have the information, or like they've had a bad experience and all that, which is fair. So I hope that, you know, in the future, as people listen more to our stories, like Daniela's and mine, that they may be more open-minded about us and, you know, support us. Like we're all humans in the end of the day, and we are contributing to society right now. My parents contribute to society too. So yeah, I hope in the future, you know, people are more open-minded about us and accept us more into this country that we all love and want to be a part of.
Absolutely, Cecia. You are an emissary, an incredible emissary. It's not just about your incredible academic achievements, about being in New World, a very competitive school to get in, and then graduating with the grades you did at the Honors College at FIU, and then moving on to get a master's, and my God, working in Microsoft Teams, right? Like you are exemplary and you are an emissary. And it's not just your success, right, that you communicate, it's also your emotion. I found nothing immature about you having to walk 2 blocks. That was courageous. That was you problem solving as a child, right? That was you having the courage, right, to hold your head up as the winds blew higher and continue walking. So very clearly, I mean, there's not a soul hearing this who can't empathize with you, and that very, at the same time, claustrophobic, ambiguous and unstable space that you were negotiating, and you still excelled beyond.
It's amazing. Am I out of order if I say something right now?
I cannot imagine you ever being out of order. Please come in,
Most
Doctor.
people often chastise me for being out of order.
No, 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 please. I would love your voice. Thank you.
I loved that voice, and I'm sure I'm going to also appreciate Daniela's voice. But this is what makes this kind of event so special. And thank you, Javi, for bringing these marvelous young women. I just wanted to use this opportunity, and remember, if you start crying, I'll cry, because we're criers.
I'm halfway there, so don't worry about it.
But Cesia, I think that one of the things that you said is a particular interest should be to all of us, both from the point of view of scholarly work and from the point of view of ethics. It is immoral to actually burden children with a kind of shame that we see exposed here and guilt. And so that because their parents are framed and defined as violators of laws, we allow this crime to happen. In fact, what is broken, it's not the parents who look for the best options for their children, it's the immigration system. And it was already really broken before this particular administration took over. So I would love if all of us made a concerted effort in really reframing the issues, taking away attention, because there's a lot of agitation as to whether these fine people actually break laws. Well, technically they do. They break really bad laws.
Right.
And that has been a tradition of Americans. That was what actually spurred the civil rights movement, a rebellion against bad laws. And so that we can all collaborate in order that beautiful people like Cesia, as a child, she's still feeling the burden of having somehow been ashamed of what her parents did. Please don't do that. Your parents are not the ones to be faulted. It's the immigration system created by powerful people waging a war against vulnerable kids.
Definitely. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fernandez-Kelly, for sharing that absolutely on-point perspective. I know my heart, by the way, went out to you, Cecia, as you were speaking about this. I'm just imagining you as a little child burdened by this, and I'm still seeing it today. And I just, you're incredible.
Yes.
You are an emissary like no other. So congratulations. We're gonna go ahead and bring Daniela in. She's gonna share her story, and then we're gonna have a dialogue and talk a little bit among ourselves. Some questions I want to pose to you. Thank you so much, Cecia. Daniela.
So hi everyone. First, I just wanted to say thank you, Cecia, for sharing your story. I was really moved by it, and I don't know. I had something prepared because there's a lot to talk about. But I first want to put up I made a little collage. Okay. So hi everyone again. Just a little bit more about my story. I was born in Cuenca, Ecuador, which is the third largest city in Ecuador, right in the middle of the Andes Mountains. And I lived there until 2002, right after I turned 3 years old. And my family brought me to the United States. My father had come the year before, and my mom followed him 6 months after, and then 6 months after her, I came. And the reason why my parents chose to leave was because I think it had a lot to do with the fact that they were young parents. My mom was 16 and my dad was 18. So they were still teenagers when they had me. Pretty much still kids, facing a lot of challenges. And anytime I talk about them, I get like really emotional, just thinking about what they went through. So a lot of challenges, uncertainty, fear, and there was a lot of violence as well, because they lived in like the city part, and I hear some stories that kind of shake me sometimes, knowing that they went through that, and knowing that they didn't always have support from the sides of their families, but so in conclusion, they really just wanted to give me a better life. They wanted me to have opportunities that being in Ecuador wouldn't give me. And even if this meant putting their lives and their futures on the back burner. And it's really a sacrifice that, like, I don't know, I'll never be able to repay them for. I'll never be able to thank them enough for, because I really think that everything happens for a reason. And I'm really, really blessed to be in the position that I am now, even given everything that's going on with my status. So going back to my story, after I came when I was 3 years old, we were reunited as a family, and my parents settled in a community about 50 miles outside of New York City, and it was a relatively large. There was a relatively large Ecuadorian community, so I grew up around a lot of diversity, and I was really lucky for that, because my favorite parts of my childhood were that I was surrounded by people who look like me. I didn't, like Cesia also, like, I didn't talk about my status when I was younger, but it was something that came up around the time that I was in 4th grade. So I had two cousins, on one on my mom's side and one on my dad's side. The one on my mom's side, her name was Ali, and the one on my dad's side, his name was Junior. Even though Ali lived in Connecticut and Junior lived in New Jersey, we were best friends, and I like grew up with them. That was like my favorite part. And life was good until, like I said, 4th grade, when I started to realize that there was something different about me. It was the year that my mom's sister, my aunt, and Ali's mom decided that the best thing for their family to do was to return to Ecuador. And what really hit me was the fact that they were going to be leaving forever. That was the phrase that kind of was the overarching, that word forever just doesn't, it makes me very uncomfortable. But I couldn't understand it being in 4th grade. And the reality was that my aunt and her husband were undocumented, and they were really just tired of living in the shadows. And because my cousin had lived, and my cousin was born in the United States, she always had that option to come back if she wanted to. So it was just really devastating for me when she left, and that's when I first started to process, like, why does it have to be forever? And then later on that same year, when my grandparents so every year they would come for 10 days at a time, just to visit us. It was like a tradition almost, that they were able to do. But that year that my cousin left, I asked my mom, I was like, Mom, like, why can everybody come visit us and we can never go visit them? And she answered me along the lines of, like, if we go, we can't come back. And that's something that I always think about it. And I don't even know if it like was something that actually happened, or if it's a memory, or if it's something that I dreamed, but that's something that I always think about. Like, if we leave, we're never going to be able to come back. So it was a lot to handle. It was a lot to process when I was so little. But then just learning about this otherness really impacted me moving forward, because the next year after that, my other favorite cousin also left for the same reasons. His family also left for the same reason. And after that, I just felt like a really big sense of just being alone, because I didn't really have my best friends anymore. There was nobody I felt that I could trust about my situation. And it was something like, being in the community that I was a part of, I think people were younger when they knew what it meant to, like, not have papers. So it was something to me that, like, I wanted to protect. I didn't want someone to, I don't know, I guess, like, bully me or make me feel less than I already had been feeling, because I knew about this so early on. But so that's important just to say, because I feel like it made me kind of like an introvert. My parents said that when I used to live in Ecuador, and like growing up, I was like always really outspoken, always I don't know, I always imagined myself being younger, much different than how I guess grew up to be until a certain point recently. So I think I wrote too much in my little outline, so I think I'm just gonna start talking from the heart.
It's been very heart-filled right now, and no, I hear you, and we see some parallels there, about that very difficult space to navigate. That forever story about your cousins, that sounds as heartfelt as anything. So yeah, just go ahead and share your story.
Yeah. So I also could relate to what Cesia was saying about like putting in a lot of work in school, because I guess once I started like middle school, towards the end, I told myself I really want to I guess school and books were my escape. So I really I was in an advanced like math class when I was younger, and I really prided myself on that because I thought that it made me I thought it gave me value. I thought that, like being the smart person in all my classes, it made me feel better about myself, and it made me feel like I was proving something to myself and to this unknown I guess cloud. So I really went into that, and I told my parents, I asked them to if they were able to, try to find an apartment the next town over, which was it's really ridiculous when I think about it now, but there was like a rating about the school. I think it was 9 out of 10, and the district that we were in was like a 3 out of 10. So I was like, Mom, please, like Mom and Dad, like I really want to go to this school. And after searching for a while, they actually found a place. And even though I was smaller, even though like we were crammed in a small little apartment, it's what we could afford. And they made that other sacrifice for me to really pursue my education. So I'll also thank them for that. But once I got to the school, I wasn't prepared for the culture shock that I was gonna get. It was a predominantly white school, and the people there, looking back, they made a really big it was a lot of people like looked at you differently if you came from a different background, or if they could tell that you didn't have a pool in your house or something like that. So that also made me feel very isolated. And when I went to that school, I was like, nobody here is a dreamer. Like there's nobody here that's going to be my best friend. So I also went, like, just did everything in school, put my heart and soul into school. And then I was studying to the point where it was just, I didn't have an end goal. I didn't know what to do once junior year came around and I was supposed to be applying for schools and colleges. This whole time I had just been studying, and I didn't know about the SAT. I didn't know how important it was. I didn't know about the ACT, like the difference between them. And I also couldn't go to my counselor because I was embarrassed and I felt that she couldn't help me. I couldn't go to my teachers because I didn't want them to read my personal statement. And at that point, like, I just felt from the research that I had been doing, I felt a lot of pressure to go to a school that would pay for everything. And I just didn't know how to get to that point. So I applied to a lot of schools just based on their ranking. And I just went into the college admissions process blind, doing all the applications on my own, not knowing how to study for the SAT, not knowing that there were resources that I could have taken advantage of. So then when I didn't get into like any of the schools that I really wanted to go to, or I thought I really wanted to go to, I just felt really bad because I didn't know. It felt like everything that I had been doing up to that point was for no, like there was no end goal in sight.
Right,
So
you could apply, but like, how are you going to pay for the school? How would you, right?
how am I going to pay for the school? I wasn't prepared to go into schools like that. And I actually applied to the University of Miami because my parents had seen, I think it was the president talk about like their support for dreamers, but I didn't know that you had to apply for a scholarship early admissions or something like that. So I was accepted in May, and then I realized like I couldn't pay for it. So it was a little bit sad because I knew that they had a really great biology program and I wanted to be in pre-med. So all of that together, and just not knowing, always thinking about the what ifs, was something that took a big toll on me. But eventually I enrolled in college, and it was a hard first year because I felt like I didn't know what I was supposed to be looking for, and I was doing stuff just to feel validated in this country.
And again, no, in retrospect, you say the what ifs, but again, obviously, you don't need to justify your being, you are, period. So again,
yeah.
that's an extra added hardship that isn't visible to some.
Mm-hmm.
It may be visible to see, okay, sure, they don't have access to SAT. Their parents never took the SAT. How should they know? But just like Cesia, and I'm going to open it up to questions in a minute so that we can talk about the other components, because I'm also watching the clock. But just like Cesia, there's this incredible human dimension to your story, right? About the sense of, forever being apart, this idea of your grandparents, as you told me, going back to Ecuador, coming from Ecuador, but you could never go there. The unanswered questions, the secrets, that gnaws at you. But instead of asking a question with the word what, I'd rather it talk about not what if, but what became, and look what you've become, right? I mean, the reason I know you is because one of the mentors, Ileana Musa, who introduced me to you, a banker, is involved with mentoring and supporting dreamers, and you yourself are part of that program. In fact, that's a beautiful photograph behind you. I saw you on a YouTube video at that ceremony. So what became of you is someone who, again, with all these odds and with all this uncertainty, and we're going to explore that a little bit further with the questions, you became who you were. And I know that you were going to talk really a little bit about the experiences with finding mentors and mentorships. So if you could just take about a minute to do that, so that then I can get into the questions, and you can continue talking about them in the Q&A.
So when I got into college after my first semester, I wanted to really put myself out there and kind of like change my perspective, because that was the semester that DACA was supposed to be rescinded. And instead of making me feel like worse, I think it actually motivated me to clear my head. And then that's when I sought out mentors. And I got really lucky, and I got a mentor she was also an immigrant. She's also a woman in technology. We shared like a lot of similar experiences of not having support. So what she did for me, I want to give back and do for others. And just like reframing my situation and trying to make it more optimistic for myself, so that I can, like, I don't know what the word is, but I can share that with others too.
Yeah, you can, just like Cecia, you're incredible emissaries. Now you're doing an internship at MasterCard. Again, another major success story, incredible grades. You could have attended all sorts of other colleges, but again, you didn't have the support to help you understand how to navigate that. But you've succeeded, right? You've succeeded beyond measure. Both of you have, and I just at this place where both of you are now, and we hear you speak about the consequences of that almost traumatic experience of having to navigate through life in the shadows and scared and what if, because the consequences are dire, right? I mean, the consequences of being found out could mean deportation, right? I mean, this is real stuff. There's not like, some little, schoolyard secret. This is real heavy stuff. But you've succeeded, and you're, at the top. You were at the top of your classes. You are in major Fortune 500 companies. You are excelling. But what obstacles do you face today? What other obstacles exist in your reality? And I'll, this is a back and forth open conversation between you, Cesia, and myself.
Sure, I can start. So today, like I said earlier, my main worry is my parents. I'm very fortunate, as of right now, like I have my permit until 2022. And so I'm not really that worried about that because I don't want to think about that and stress myself out because I've done that before and it's just terrible. So as of like today, like that's my main concern, making sure that they don't get deported or that, they have the financial needs, especially like, in technology, like here in Silicon Valley or like Seattle, where I'm about to move to, the rent is super expensive. I need to make sure that, they can afford where they're gonna live. And just how they took care of me, like I've taken that as my main responsibility to make sure that they're safe and, that nothing bad happens to them. And I think that would be my main concern as of now. I'm also like, I have so many friends that are also undocumented and it's just really scary. Like I have a lot of friends who are, who can't even start work yet because maybe their permit expired. And like with the whole Supreme Court thing on DACA, like it's just putting everyone at risk. Like had I not, had the financial means to pay for my new permit that will enable me to 2022, like I would be in that same boat and I would be like in really bad shape right now. I wouldn't even be able to work. So things like that, like it's just crazy. Like I was just thinking the other day, like had I not resubmitted my renewal, like I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be able to work right now. I would probably be homeless or something. Like you never know. But yeah, thankfully, I'm also pretty lucky that I got married recently, and so I'll be able to fix that situation. But my parents are still my main priority, and they're still not living their dream, and I'm worried about that. And hopefully, I know in this climate, that's just not going to happen. Like they're probably not going to get their well-deserved papers, but I'm looking for ways to see how in the future I can provide for them and that I can help them in any way that I can.
Thank you. And Daniela, what obstacles, again, you've succeeded, what obstacles do you see in front of you right now as you're moving forward?
So moving forward, so in school, I spent, like in college, I spent a lot of time, when you get to choose kind of like the projects that you want to do for political science classes, and some of my econ classes, I've focused on kind of like dreamers and all of that whole situation. And every time I learn something new, but the biggest thing that's going to happen pretty soon is the Supreme Court decision, which is really, it has, I don't know, it makes you think a lot, and it makes me worry and like anxious, and sometimes I can't sleep thinking about it because you don't know what the court is going to say. And my permit expires next year actually, and there's this question of, I shouldn't renew it so early, or should I renew it this early on, because usually you're supposed to submit it a few months before. And it's just, I think that is something that is always in the back of my mind. But even more so, like Cesia was saying, I want my parents to have that opportunity to be able to do something that they really want to do. Especially my mom. My mom went back to school and she really wants to do accounting as her job, but she can't get an internship. Like after she graduates, she's gonna have her degrees, but she's not gonna be able to act on it, and that's something that pains me a lot. And to know that maybe even like my ability to work could be taken away next month. It's just something that I'm always thinking about.
Yeah, thank you. I know that in our conversations, we talked about you having one of your parents on a phone app, and you looked at that app to see if your parent was still okay. Like you literally stress out about where your parents is, and again, being in this space of uncertainty, it's almost paralyzing. And I just again want to applaud both of you. There's another dimension to the obstacles that we are facing, right? There's the dimension of not just facing, again, hostile practices that don't let you realize your full dreams, because you're always looking around to make sure that you, your family, those you love are okay. But in the age of Corona, during this pandemic, some of those vulnerabilities get exacerbated. There are people who are literally like this woman here, who is a meat packer, who was working in a plant and got COVID-19 and wound up at an ICU because the place at the plant where she was supposed to get checked for job-related illnesses, like having her coworker infect her with the virus while she was preparing meat for us to eat. You know, that's an absolute vulnerability that came about. And I know that, for instance, I know you, Daniela, lived very close to where the first cases of COVID-19 happened in New York. In fact, you took the same train that the first person that contacted the disease and then initially started spreading out in the New York area. You literally were on that train and on that line. And I just want to explore with both of you as dreamers, what particular vulnerabilities are exacerbated, exposed when you're looking at it through the prism of COVID-19. I know that behind me, I have images from a England newspaper doing a series on not criminals. These aren't criminals. These are people detained by, these are human beings. These are mothers and sisters and daughters detained by ICE, but they're serving what could be a death sentence because of the very close spaces where they're detained and where the virus is spreading. And I'm just wondering if in your world, if there's examples of you, your parents, your life, where not only is the vulnerability that you felt, the obstacles that you felt present day, but those that have been even exacerbated since this pandemic started.
So I'll just start. When the pandemic began, so both my parents are gig workers, and it was just really scary because there's no stimulus for us. They're like, my parents have to go to work. My parents can't work from home, and it's so especially my dad. My dad had to go to work. I think he only took 1 day off, 2 days off, but he went to work, and I'm glad that there was work for him, but it was scary. And till this day, he still comes in through the basement. So I think he leaves work. He leaves to go to work through the basement because he has his work clothes down there, and that's where our washing machine is. And then every day he comes up from the basement so that he won't like expose us to anything that we shouldn't be exposed to or that we don't have to be exposed to. So he puts himself on the line all the time since the beginning of this whole thing, when I want to say people were even more scared than they are, I guess, now. So it was just hard to see, and I always felt bad for him for it.
Right, he's got the type of gig work, right, and the construction, right, where he cannot do, you know, like work from a computer and work remotely. You know, he has to have the mortar in his hand. He has to be there, and he doesn't have the kind of benefits either from the federal government or from his employer that would allow him to feel safe. So here's yet another level. Again, we're exposing things that aren't so visible, like the torment that you felt as children, and now the next iteration of this national abuse inflicted upon you through again, these draconian policies. And what about you, Cecia? Do you have
Yeah.
something to share with that? COVID?
So, it's funny because I always think about this question, had coronavirus happened like 2 years ago or a year ago before I graduated, because my reality would have been so much different. Like, this is why education is so important, and, making sure that dreamers are getting educated. So thank you, scholarship, the Dream.us. Had this been like a year ago, my parents would have had to go out and like also, work. Like they're the ones who were, helping me the whole time and, having a roof over my head and all that. But now that, I have a good job and I can work from my house, and so can my husband. He's also a software engineer. So life is really different for us, and I am immunocompromised, and so are my parents. So I actually told them to quit their jobs, because I wanted to make sure that they didn't get sick. They're older, and let me actually share a picture of them. I forgot to. So that's them. And that's my husband. And so they're definitely not in a position where I think they should be out there and, going to work in an enclosed space or cleaning someone else's house. Because if they get sick, the amount of money that we would have to spend for an undocumented person who has no Medicaid or no, healthcare, it would just be thousands of dollars that we just can't afford. So I just told them that I'd rather spend on them now and make sure that they're okay and feed them and all that, versus having one of them fall really sick and then me having to pay all the bills, which could go up to 100,000 and stuff like that. So I definitely am blessed, and unfortunately a lot of people in my community aren't. So.
Yeah, that's truly unfortunate in the sense that you see, again, people who we discover have essential jobs, like providing the food that America eats, essential jobs, but don't have the safety net to care for them. And I fear that, I don't fear it, I see it. I see it that, we're 1.5 million tested cases. We don't know what the real number of infections are on our country, and we are closely approximating 100,000 of the ones counted. And how many of those uncounted are the undocumented, the untested, the uncounted, right? That is a reality. That's another invisible space that we need to shine light on. And I just want to celebrate both of you, because through your testimony, through your courage, but more importantly, through your life, who you are, who you've become, and what you've done, you've exemplified American idealism to the highest, right? You are American purity, right? At least what we aspired to be, what we have yet to become. And I celebrate you. And as part of asking you, to continue educating us based on your experience, what you have lived through, what advice or what would you want us to do? What would you want to do for the little Danielas and the little Cesias that are with us today? That little girl who had to be careful about what friends to say what to, that little girl who had to say goodbye to her cousins. They're here with us today and now. Except that the reality now is even more hostile, because if you have a government that can care more about a pound of beef than about the worker who puts that beef on your plate, if you care more about getting your politics in tune with an electorate that needs, red meat, you're willing to separate a child from his mom, a baby from his mom at the border, and put them in cages. If you're in that reality and in that political space where you launch your election campaign by calling an entire nation of people rapists, right? If you are in that planet and you're a little Daniela or a little Cesia, you're going to be a whole lot more traumatized and abused by this national perspective than the reality that you had faced a decade ago. And I'm just wondering, based on what the walk you walked to the very top of the stairs where both of you are now, where you can literally pay so that your parents don't have to work and get infected, right? Where you are in that place, right? What would you do for those groups? And either of you can wants to take that on. Do you want to?
I guess I can answer quickly before Daniela. So my main regret was not having my parents more involved throughout like my whole childhood and education experience. They were often, working and trying to, feed me. So unfortunately, they weren't able to
I think my Zoom is refreshing.
I'm so sorry. Say that again. I see you perfectly, Cecia. Go ahead. So that was someone else who. Yeah.
Okay. So unfortunately, I was not able to have my parents at the PTA meeting or have them being involved, which I really would have loved. So especially because they don't speak English or anything. So I think it is important for community of the Dream.us or universities to kind of have more outreach to the parents, not just to the dreamers. If that makes sense, I would love to see a community of parents, gathering during freshman year. My parents did not know how to guide me. They didn't know how to, Daniela, she had trouble doing her essay, finding out about the SAT. Myself, I only had one counselor who didn't really know how to deal with dreamers. So I think that if our parents can have a safe space to find out about all these things even ahead of time, who doesn't want their dreamer kid to be triumphant in life? But a lot of times they're scared because they don't have the accessibility to even talk to professors. They don't have the accessibility to talk to counselors. They don't have the money for it. They don't have the language for it. So if there's any way that, our scholarships, our universities can create a space for them to find out ahead of time, then I think we would see a vast increase of Hispanic and undocumented students enrolled in these universities. A lot of times it's just that they don't know where to find it. I've had multiple people message me how did you get into tech? How did you even get into this company? And as a DACA person, and it's oh, just because you're DACA, it doesn't impede you from succeeding. You just have to look for it. But I understand how it can be really difficult to find that information because there really isn't a place for a parent to guide you. When you're a dreamer, I feel you're basically your own parent when it comes to education. You just have to do it yourself because a lot of our parents, they can barely afford the bills because they have really low paying jobs and all that. So yeah, I definitely think getting our parents involved from the beginning would have been so much easier as a child, and them just being ahead on what I need to do to get to this university or to this step. So yeah, that's my.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant, sis. And of course, it's a support group to help them make you better students. But they're just like you're negotiating right through this chaotic space. They are too. So like a support group for them, right? And of course, the idea that they're undocumented and vulnerable and targeted makes that a harder reality to accomplish. Clearly,
yeah.
But
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
And just how in college, we had, people from Google or all these companies, in computer science, they would always come and give us a chat and all of this. I think it would be cool for them to see a dreamer who has graduated and has done all this and then help them make a plan for their own kid as they're growing up. So it's more of a guidance and a way for them to also network with other dreamers or other parents of dreamers who have been able to achieve that and more.
Thank you so much, Cesia. And Daniela, what recommendation would you have for the little Danielas out there? You know, so Cesia just explained, let's focus on trying to figure out how we can support the parents. I know that mentorship was really important to you to help you navigate, to bridge that chasm, that distance between you and your success. What ideas do you have, Daniela, for the little Danielas out there?
So this is more kind of like how I can, I guess, give back. So for me, like I mentioned, mentorship has been a really big help in my life, especially now in college. I've seen a complete 180 change in my academics, in the way I seek out opportunities, and the person that I become now is someone that I want to do my part, like where the government, I guess, is lacking, or I really just don't trust what they have in mind, or if they even have a plan for the future Danielas and Cesias of the United States. So I feel like I put a lot of pressure on myself to give back. So I even like this January, I went to Mississippi, to the Mississippi Center for Justice, to volunteer my time to get intakes for the workers who were affected by the Mississippi ice raids in August. So doing things like that, and like getting more people to get involved that are allies, is something that I can do. Whereas when I was younger, I felt like kind of helpless, and you don't always really know what the best way to help yourself is.
So thank you. I'm not going to open it to questions. We're really past our time. And just if there's any panelists that have questions, please put them in the Q&A. I want to tell you, both of you, that you have inspired Roberto Gonzalez, who at 3 o'clock wrote, this is not a question, but I just wanted to say thank you to the 2 young women. Your stories are powerful and inspiring. And in every way, Cesia, that DACA student that a parent needs to hear and see, I am seeing in you. And Daniela, that mentor, that DACA person who wants to, through their work, through their effort, through their purpose, their volunteerism, want to effectuate change, whether it's in a chicken factory in Mississippi or at a MasterCard internship in New York City, that person is you. And both of you make us dream for a better state and a better nation. So thank you so much. I know we're beyond our time and I don't see any questions here, but I think that you have more than answered and inspired. Well, I have one from Dr. Fernandez-Kelly. Dr. Fernandez-Kelly, you can just, I think, speak if you don't mind. Yeah.
I will be very brief. Thank you, ladies. You are quite wonderful. I just wanted to make a point that these are exceptional individuals. They are the achievers in the classification that I include in my paper. We also have to think about individuals who are not as gifted, but still deserving of an opportunity. When I was their age, I was not a professor at Princeton University. If I had been an immigrant, I would have needed a lot of help in order, and a lot of support. And the other one is, thank you, Cesia, for mentioning assistance to parents. That's what my organization tries to do. And I'd love to be in touch with you about that model, because it is true that parents want the best for their children, but sometimes they don't have all the information that they need. So thank you for those presentations. They were wonderful.
Great. Well, thank you so much again, Cesia. I know, Daniela, you're running back to your final exams, and Cesia, I know you're working for Microsoft. So I really appreciate both of you taking time and sharing with this panel. And with that, let me give it back to the moderator. Thank you so much.